Hello and welcome to my time lapse. Today I am showing off the footage from the Draw This in Your Style meme thing made by Poopikat on Instagram. And despite the beautifully fascinating name, it makes me think of a cat that doesn't clean their derriere after they use the litter box. They're an amazing artist who is someone that I greatly respect, and I saw their beautiful curly-haired ice cream-ish girl, and I thought, wow, dang Skippy son, that would be something I'd fancy a nice little redraw, yes sirree. So, I decided to do that. It's my first ever Draw This in Your Style attempt, and I really had a lot of fun with it, and someday I would like to do another one. Probably something made by someone I know this time rather than just a Instagram senpai that I don't personally know, because a lot of really cool stuff is made by friends too, not just popular people. And it's always really fun to draw stuff with your friends because then you get a more immediate reaction and you get to hang out with them more. Now, what I've been doing lately when starting out with larger pictures is I'll lay down just the flat colors without doing any sketching, which is what I did this time around, is I just lay down the flat colors and then I start sketching in the details. And I mostly just add in color in this very early stage using an overlay or a multiply layer to get in the shadows very quickly. Using a very low opacity brush, I almost never go above 30% in this early painting stage because it's just a lot easier to gauge how dark the opacity is going to be if you just use a much lighter brush instead of just lowering it every time you need to lower the layer. And this time, instead of just sort of doing whatever in terms of skin, where I start out with a reddish, considering that the nearby immediate area was more blue, I decided to throw in a lot of green and blue into her skin tone this time around, as well as orange, because in the original, her skin is kind of a slightish bit muddy orange, which is really, really beautiful. Kind of reminds me of a mermaid. Gonna drag you to your death. Just like art. Bazinga. And because of that, I really wanted to do sort of a more muddy, stylized kind of shading than hyper-realistic or attempt at realistic, like I tend to normally attempt. So I had a lot more weirder colors to deal with, which was a little bit difficult, especially in the lips and the eyes, because the eyeshadow, it can very easily make her look like she's been punched or she just got out of a really cool fight club. And as awesome as that sounds, I don't really think that was the original intent with the original picture. So it's kind of a struggle trying to balance the hues, making sure that we have a nice beautiful blue, dark blue transition without making it look like that she's got an abusive partner or anything. Now for this, I used a solid mixture of airbrush and just normal brush, because normally I just almost exclusively use either the airbrush in major areas and then the normal circle brush in the smaller areas, which is usually what I normally do, but today I used the hard brush instead of the airbrush a little bit more because while the airbrush is great for laying things out, in something like this, where it kind of needs to have really sharp cutoff points, I kind of had to make things a little bit harder edged and couldn't really get away with doing things a little too blurry as I like to do, because it sort of has a dreamlike quality in of itself. So the hair, especially, to be detailed, it had to be a much harder brush than I normally use. And it was really, really fun trying to deal with the composition of it, because the character, I kind of had free interpretation to do anything that I really wanted to do, but in the original, you see, it was sort of a triangle silhouette, and I wanted to try and keep that without keeping it too confined, and I wanted her hair to be really cartoony, giant swirls, and really like she just popped out of bed in a Pixar movie, and they're just falling everywhere. And because of that, I wanted it to have a general silhouette of a triangle, but still kind of be a little bit lumpy and organic without being confined to a triangle necessarily. Another one of the fun parts of working on this was trying to figure out what my messy nonsense lack of sketch was reading to me as, and trying to maintain the flow of the picture without making one particular area too large and not making another curl look slightly more detailed than the other curl. So it was kind of a really good challenge, is another reason that I'm really happy this was my first Draw This in Your Style to attempt, was that hair is always a struggle, and having such a large, fun piece of hair to deal with was something I was really, really excited about doing. And I think I kind of had a good amount of practice with this, especially because in more cartoony pictures, I kind of want to stray away from rendering hair realistically. I would kind of prefer it to be large and sort of a large piece of, not plasticky, but as though it's the same sort of texture as the rest of the character. Like the same way they render hair in a lot of cartoony style games like Fortnite, for example, and so on and so forth, where the hair is just sort of a large piece of polygon rather than being an individually rendered mane, is really something that I've been loving the visual and aesthetic of, and I was trying to sort of replicate in this, where it's not realistically rendered hair, it is more a large, big piece that's part of her, which I thought would be really, really fun. Because balancing cartoony and semi-realism is something that I struggle greatly with, and I'm constantly teetering between, okay, I want to learn to draw realism, but I also want to maintain my style. But my style with realism looks kind of gross and nasty and horrifying, and it looks like some sort of uncanny valley monster beast. That's cool. So it's just kind of a constant teetering balance between, oh crap, this one looks too cartoony. Oh crap, this one looks way too not cartoony. This one looks not cartoony enough. The anatomy on this one's a little bit too realistic. The anatomy on this one is rendered realistically, but is not drawn realistically, and it looks kind of gross. And that's why I have such respect for people who can do cartoony art styles super, super good. It is something that I just adore. I would just not have any passion for art if there was no cartoony art styles. If everything were semi-realism or realism, I probably wouldn't even think about art. I'd probably go run off into the mountains and be a wood carver or something. Just something that doesn't involve art, because without cartoony stylization, there is nothing that I really, really, really adore about art. Not to say that I can't enjoy a good realistic picture. I enjoy wonderful, wonderful pictures, but if it comes down to what I'm making and a majority of what I'm consuming, I would prefer it to be like stylized and really fun and exciting and pretty looking versus grayish realism or hyper realism that's basically just a photograph. I have huge respect for people who can do that, but it's just not my cup of tea when it comes to what sort of pictures I would prefer to look at. So the way that my workflow sort of goes is that I always try to focus on the face first, because of course the face is the thing that your eye is first drawn to no matter what picture typically. So I usually start with the face, try to get it the most rendered, and then work out from there, so I have sort of a standard to work against, so I know how much the rest of the picture comparatively has to be rendered in comparison with the face itself, which makes it a kind of fun challenge, because sometimes I won't finish a face and I'll try and work on another part of the picture, and then I'll go, wait a minute, my point of reference has not been made yet. I am working without my point of reference. So then I have to do the face to catch up with the other parts, and then I have to do the other parts to catch up with the face. So it's a fun little give and take sort of exchange between the center focal point of the picture and the rest of it as well. So throughout this speed paint that I've noticed is I feel like before all my time lapses, I would start with the face, focus on it for a while, and then I don't really touch it till much more till the end. And this one I kind of started Yes, mostly with the face, but I kind of ran off not really focusing on the face too much until the bitter end and adding a lot more to it versus just keeping the rest of the picture in the same quality as the face as we rendered it all together as one, which is probably a much better workflow. And I think the result, while I'm not 100% satisfied, I think the picture turned out fun and cute, and that's pretty much all I wanted. I can do better next time. It's not my most favoritist thing I've ever drawn, but I'm proud of the results nonetheless. And so the concept of working at the whole picture as it all together rather than zeroing in on one part kind of adds a lot to it, I think, and makes the workflow, if not easier, but just a little bit more organic, and it makes the end result a lot more balanced in terms of what has this amount of rendering and so on and so forth. And that's another important thing about when starting out a painting that I thought of is because I wanted that green that's currently poking out to be there initially, I had to add a lot of yellow underneath the blue so that it could show through. And that when I blended it out, it wouldn't really be not there anymore. It would still show through. So you kind of have to think ahead when you're starting out with a picture and consider when you're blending what you're going to need to kind of get the hues that you're aiming for. Of course, there's always benefits and downsides to this painting without lines. Mostly that I didn't really have a proper anatomy measured out at all. I just kind of winged it, and I ended up with a lot of issues that I had to fix later on that required a good bit of time to redo. Despite that, though, I do think that the fact of how fast it is and streamlined it is, and I don't have to really worry about measuring out the composition at first. I can just throw some blobs on there and worry about it later. It kind of suits my lazy, very hyper, easily distracted personality and mind to the point that it's like, what? I can paint and I don't have to worry about making a sketch first and cleaning up the sketch and adding flats. Nope, the painting is the flats. Oh my goodness, my mind has been blown. I don't have to do extra steps. So there's always a cost and benefit solution to every type of digital and traditional painting, I would imagine. Is some ways work faster but less efficient, more efficient but less fast, etc., etc. And on this, I kind of feel that I went with a good midway of, yeah, I kind of had to redo a lot of details, but if I sketched it out, I would have to clean up a lot of lines, and I really didn't want to do that for something so big and something that has so many lines in it innately anyway. Is not something that I wanted to spend a good amount of time cleaning up at all. Now, another unfortunate thing is that I've had to redo the face multiple times because originally I thought I had what I wanted, realized it looked awkward, had to redo it, realized it was not close to what I wanted despite looking better, had to redo it again, thought it looked better, and thought it was what I wanted, had friends look at it, said it was not very good, and then I finally redid it, and then I was finally close to sort of how I want. So it's safe to say that I redid the face at least 4 times in this video. It's also fun to note that I think when recording time lapses, it kind of encourages me to work faster, since that means while I'm working, I'm just going, oh man, I gotta do this in the most efficient way possible. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to edit this later, and it's gonna be slightly more editing, and my lazy bum probably doesn't want to do that. So there's upsides to doing time lapses, which is I get the picture done faster, but of course at the same time the quality might be diminished because I'm semi-rushing it. Not necessarily rushing it, because the original recording time of this is, I don't remember the time, I need to look back later. Something like 6 or 8 hours. I don't remember. And despite that, it's not the longest time lapse I've ever recorded, but it still takes forever. And it's good because it encourages me to finish things, because I have hundreds upon hundreds of works in progress that I have not finished yet. But at the same time, it means that I'm putting out a less quality thing. But that's good with things like draw this in your styles, because draw this in your styles usually has like at least the one I was doing, the artist had a due date or a time limit. And so it kind of encouraged me to work faster. And also I knew I had to finish it in a certain amount of time because I was going on vacation by the time that the picture needed to be submitted. So I had to finish it even sooner than what was initially expected to be submitted. So that also encouraged me. I guess being put under pressure lights a fire under yourself, or something along those lines. There is also something I would like to note. If in any of my videos you ever see a quick flash of the desktop or of just flicking on or off reference layers, please know that in actual real life, these are all accidents. I do not mean to accidentally hit the desktop button when I'm recording. And when it comes to editing 8 hours worth of footage and cutting out every single slight millisecond of accidental flashing, it gets kind of built up and it gets a little bit difficult. And I try to get as many as I can, but I apologize if there's any in the middle or somewhere else in the picture, because I mean, I am only human. I cannot edit 8 hours of footage and get every single little flash of desktop or reference picture out. That's not to say I wouldn't love to, though. In fact, I would love it if my videos ended up being an absolute best that they could possibly be. But unfortunately, I am left with my human brain and human fingers and human programming. Unfortunately, we haven't reached the point where we're all cyborgs yet, so until my brain is integrated into Adobe Premiere, I'm afraid that we're going to have to deal with this. Of course, my occasional flickering of reference is somewhat intentional, because sometimes I just need a quick little look-see-loo. Like, just a quick little look-see-loo to know, okay, that's what that looks like, gotta get back to work. And because of that, it sort of makes it a little bit harder to find all the little missing pieces. And as much as I would love to rewatch an 8-hour video until it's absolutely perfect, I think that's a little bit unrealistic for anyone's schedule, even including my very open schedule. It's just a hassle and it's not worth it no matter what. And if the ending effect is that the video's almost exactly the same, except there's a slight flicker of another picture, then it's safe to assume I'm just trying to brainwash you with subliminal messaging. That, or I just didn't get all of the references edited out. You can go either or, it's probably both. Although I'm not too sure what I would even need to brainwash anyone into doing. I guess that would just be, follow me on Instagram. Although I don't really I just kind of post there and leave, so it's not like I particularly use Instagram over anything else. I don't know, if I were going to subliminally message someone, I think I would be something really cool, but I can't really think of anything cool. Be like, hug your cat for me, or send me pictures of your cat. Something lame like that. I'm not very creative. I would make a horrible cult leader. Although, getting back to the actual video at hand, this is the part where I actually start putting care and love into rendering everything and cleaning it up super, super nice, making everything seem crisp and nice and clean, like a freshly pressed shirt. Although this freshly pressed shirt is covered in random hues of blue and yellow. So it's a freshly pressed shirt that's covered in, I'm guessing, grease stains or maybe food coloring. Yeah, food coloring. Food coloring tends to be those colors. Yeah. So, and this is the part where I also start kind of endgaming the scheme, where I realize, oh crap, the face is messed up. Time to hop on that really strictly. The contrast is messed up. Time to really get strict on that. Because before, most of the video, as is with most of my paintings, is just cleaning up the lack of sketch or the lack of line art, and making everything hard-edged and the proper shape, rather than necessarily adding shading to it, which is a semi-simple process comparatively to just making sure everything's cleaned up. If I were painting and I had all of my sketches with clean lines, I think painting would only take me like 5 hours for something the size of this, versus the solid 8, where I guess 3 of those were just cleaning everything up and making sure that it wasn't lumpy or sketchy or covered in multiply layer. There's also the fun idea that it's New Year's, meaning that we're all going to make pretend resolutions that we will stick to for maybe even a solid month or two before realizing immediately that life overtakes better habits being developed. And I would like to make as many time lapses as possible. I love making them, and I love producing them, and I love watching the pictures being drawn after I've drawn them. I think it's really fun and unique to see how much it develops and changes. It is something that I adore. But at the same time, I struggle with just creating pictures without recording them. With recording them, I have to keep other things in mind, like, okay, I can't really distract myself. I can't really open up and play a video game while I'm doing that and take a mini break in between. I have to make sure that I get as much footage in one video as possible as to save editing time if I can, so on and so forth. So perhaps I should try and get a little more loosey-goosey with how I record, and maybe that'll increase my production of time lapses, because that is something that I would really like to do more of, because I think this is fun. Look at that, that little line got drawn. It was great. That was good stuff. I'd give that a little look-see-loo. I would. Looking at it now, though, I am really happy with how the hair turned out. I really like the solid, strong pieces with the light affecting every strand. I'm really happy with how that looks. Nah, but drawing the hair in this was really, really fun, and I kind of want to stick with how it looks from now on. If I get a chance to it, I'm not trying to do realistic hair. I kind of wanted this to be the alternate way that I draw hair, just because I really love the hard rendering, shiny plastic look. I think it looks really, really cool. I just love things that are hyper cartoony and hyper rendered. Absolute dream style. Plus 1% closer to it, I guess. Not quite where I want to be or how I envision my art, absolutely not, but I guess you're never really supposed to get there. You're just always supposed to be improving. Never really satisfied. And if you are, then that means you're probably not improving in the same way that you could be if you just were constantly dissatisfied and just constantly trying to find ways to make yourself even more satisfied with your art. I guess you could say my taste lies closer to Fortnite style and Overwatch style in terms of just cartoony semi-realism. I absolutely adore cartoony semi-realism, and while I'm not really anywhere near as good as the art styles of either of those, I definitely consider them big sort of, I'm not going to say inspirations, because both of those things came out after I knew that I kind of loved the hyper cartoony semi-realism look. I'm trying to think of anything that suits that style more than Overwatch or Fortnite that came out before them, but those are the only ones in recent memory that I can think of that is similar to the style that I really, really enjoy. Another thing of note is I don't really know what to say during these. So, if anyone ever has any questions or wants me to talk more in depth about a certain something that I'm not talking about that I should be, can you please tell me, because I have no clue. I am looking at the timeline going, well, I don't have to do a voiceover, but I'd like to. May as well, and then if people don't like the voiceover, they can just mute the video and we'll just watch the video. So that works out, but I don't really know what to say during the videos. I guess I could just voice my opinions about old 1960s cartoons. That's always an option, I guess, although I don't think that it's horribly relevant to the videos, so maybe that would be a poor idea. Although, I do want to also add that at this point I had asked my friends on our Discord server for help with what was wrong with the image, and it's always awesome having people that you can ask for advice from, because it really makes life a lot easier when you can ask people and know exactly what's wrong with the picture instead of just scouring it and not even noticing what you didn't initially see in the first place. So that's always nice to see. Now we're just sort of doing the final touches of, again, taking the feedback and adding it to the picture, and me deciding yet again that the face isn't good enough, and adding touch-ups and edits to make it a little less scary and lumpy and smudgy and all that good other stuff that ends with E but is a negative connotation. Now, figuring out whether or not a picture is finished is kind of a issue for me sometimes, because a lot of people say, well, I know when it's finished because of this and this and this. I'm just like, well, till I run out of things that I think needs fixing, honestly. As long as I don't notice anything that's particularly bugging me, then I consider it finished. And that should tell you why my pictures take so long. Well, in my eyes, they take so long. Most people spend like 48 hours on a really good picture, and I just like, yeah, I just vomited it out in like 6 hours. That's why it doesn't look particularly good, because a lot of people are like, I have to make sure that this looks very nice and it's accurate and all this. I'm just like, well, as long as my untrained eye can't see anything horribly offensive to myself, then yeah, it's pretty much done. Now, this has me wondering if it would be fun or not to try streaming a time lapse in a different program, like Fire Alpaca or Clip Studio or something. I just use Photoshop because it's what I'm most familiar with, but maybe even an MS Paint time-lapse would be fun. I'm down for trying out anything. I'm always down for new things. Maybe I'll do all that someday. Eventually. If I get around to it. It takes me forever and a half just to make these normal videos with my own normal pace. And that alone is pretty darn slow. Unfortunately, I am not fast. I am a very slow worker. Wish I could be faster at these. I don't really know a way to make myself faster, honestly. But the picture is completed. Look at her go. Look at that. I finished recording the time lapse. I'm so happy. Alright, thank you for watching. Please have a good rest of your day or night, whatever you're doing.